Hi everybody, my name is Audrey if you're new here, and I am a watercolor artist and teacher, and I have my own little shop here and I teach watercolor classes, and I thought let's get started with doing some stuff online. So we've already done, I'll make this quick, just some strawberries, we've done some cherries, and today we're gonna do these little tiny trees. I'll show them up close. So I'm going to tell you what supplies you need, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So it's going to be really simple. We just need a pencil, number 2 pencil, whatever, a little kneaded eraser if you have one, because they don't leave shavings all over your paper and it's just nice. I learned how to paint with one brush, so that's what we'll use today. This is a size 10 Winsor & Newton round watercolor brush. If you have something similar to this and it has a tip of the brush and the belly of the brush, that's going to be great. I am using just like a 3x3 square of 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. I like to use the Canson brand. And then I'll show you my paints. I'm using like a pan set like this. And you need to have water. I like to have a towel, or you could have paper towel ready. I have lit a little candle. You maybe need to get yourself a snack. I don't know, something to drink, a sweater, and then let's go ahead and get started. So this one right here is the one we're going to do together today. And then when I finish this, I'm going to be doing the class for this one. And you can find a link to that on my website if you want a longer one where you see the trees are taken from that. But we're going to keep it nice and simple today. So we've got our piece of paper. This is 3x3, nice and small. And we're going to get started with our sketching. So you don't need to even have your paints around yet, just your pencil and your eraser. And I'm going to start by just putting in a little line down here. If I laid my finger down, maybe it would be kind of right on top of that. Just go really light on your pencil, and that means that you can easily erase, which means you're free to sketch and erase and try it out and see what you get. But we're going to just go with this for now. And then what you're going to find is that we're only going to sketch the trunks of the trees. I'll give you options here, but we just have 2 of them. So let's kind of maybe make them, we'll separate this line into like thirds. We'll put one over here, really light on your pencil. If you don't like it, you'll just move it. And then one a little bit further over. And those are just 2 lines that are basically next to each other. They get wider at the bottom. This one will have a line that comes up, leave a little bit of space, almost like the top of the letter K, but then we're going to come down and a little wider at the bottom. Let me get closer for you. Okay. And we don't need to worry about anything else other than that. I'll erase the line I didn't like. Got your kneaded eraser for that too. And if you feel better putting some sort of an outline on here, we can do it, but let's just press like really lightly on our pencil for it. So super light. And maybe you could do kind of like a triangle, a little bit wider on the bottom. Maybe make it kind of curvy. Let's find the top. Maybe put a little dot there or a little curve. And I just want really light lines if you're going to stick anything here. And once again, you don't need to, but this will be like a guide. What I want to tell you though is that once we paint over this with our watercolor paint, you won't be able to erase any pencil that's under the paint. If it's outside of the paint, you can let it fully dry and then you'll be able to erase it. So let's do it here too, but actually don't, they can touch, but just a little bit. Let's kind of keep them, because you'll find that gives us a little bit of control later on. We'll go same height, maybe you go one's a little shorter, that's up to you. And this is just like really light and loose. And even then you could lighten it up if you wanted to. We don't actually need that. So if you want it, you've got it. And then we're gonna, that's our sketch. That's the whole thing. So you can take your pencil and your eraser and set them aside. And now we're gonna work on getting our paints ready. I always like to prep our paints before we start painting. That's like a guide to success with watercolor, because you'll find that watercolor is about timing. It really is. So these are some colors that I used when I just made this one up. But I'm going to go ahead. I'll just show you that if I rehydrated them, if I took my brush and dipped it in water, I can use that paint again, which is great. I did not know that when I first started painting. But for now, we want to make new colors. So we're just going to disregard those. And I want to have 3 different greens, like a light, some sort of a medium, and then a very dark. So I'm going to show you how we're going to get that. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see my whole paint palette. Okay, so I'm going to dip my brush into my water, and I want to grab some of this one. It already has water in there, so I don't need a lot, but you want to make sure you can kind of get the paint off of there real easy. Swipe it onto your palette. Then I'm going to add water and come straight back so that this is a puddle. Do you see how puddly it looks? Okay. Now I'm going to clean my brush and grab another color. Cleaning my brush. For this one, I'm going to take right down here in the bottom. So if you had this same set, that's where you're going to find it. I'm going to swipe some on here, grab some water, and come back. I don't want these to be, like this one can be more watery, but when we get into the medium and the dark, let's not have quite as much water. So I'm actually going to touch my brush to my towel to take some of that off, but I'm going to add a little bit more paint into there. So it's still a puddle. You can still see light reflecting on it. There's enough water to move it around, but it's kind of smaller. And then we're going to try to create this really dark color. Now, if you notice, it almost looks like black. I'm going to dip my brush into the water. What I need now is like my darkest green, and I'm going to add the tiniest bit of red. And here's how we figured that out. If we look at a color wheel and we look at green, red is across. And so that's how we're figuring out how to get a darker, really rich green. It's by adding across on the color wheel. So I'll grab this really dark one, swipe it on. I'm going to kind of mix a couple of them. I don't want to add much water here. And then I'll get a little bit of red. And look how dark it is. I'll add red until I like where it's at. If you did this though, and your pile turned into dark red, it's okay. Just add more green. You can actually like tip it back and forth. Like I could add so much red that this would be like a really dark, rich red or green. You can go back and forth. Okay, we've got those 3 ready. We're gonna end up using a brown, but we don't need to make that one first. We're okay. So I'm gonna move this out of our way a little bit. Bring our papers back. I'm cleaning out my brush, and I'm gonna dry it just so that you're like totally with me here. Let me zoom in. That's better. I dried my brush off on the towel. Now I'm gonna just maybe dip the first, I don't know, third of my brush into the water. I'm gonna get into my green puddle here. This is called stippling. And you see it is like polka dots, but not, because they're all connected and they create these organic shapes. So I'm taking my first color, the lightest color. We go lights to dark with watercolor. And I'm gonna just, it's like I'm polka dotting, right? But watch how my hand moves back and forth. Okay, all these polka dots, but I'm going up and down and sideways, right? And I'm filling in this whole shape that I made, but I actually want them to touch at the same time. So you see, we don't actually have polka dots. If you have polka dots, you need to make some of them touch because we want the water to flow through here. So we're done with our light color. I'm not going to add any water to my brush. I'm going to go into this puddle. And if I find that I have too much water, we'll know because it'll start to feel out of control. So I'm going to take some of this color. Let's pretend like our light source is up here on the top left. So that's where our lightest color would be over here. And I'm going to start to touch this. I'm going to try to slow myself down. I think I'm going fast. And now I've made it where this is where the highlight is, and this medium green is sort of blending across. So my paint is still wet, and I actually want to show you how much you can see. Ooh, let's focus here. Do you see how much water that is? I don't want to move it around too much because gravity is going to mess up our paint, right? But it's glossy and reflective. That's how we know that the paint or that the water is going to pull the color, and we'll get that soft bleed. So now I have to act while it's wet. I'm going to get into my darkest color here. And now I want to keep this all the way like at the bottom and to the right. So I'll start in the corner. And if it takes over too fast, you have too much water. And if it doesn't really even blend at all, you probably don't have enough water. So that's what you're watching for. Maybe one more dot. I'm going to clean my brush. And I'm just gonna leave it. We're done with the top of this tree. So I gave us 2 trees today though, so that we could try it again. So we're gonna do the same thing again. I'm dipping just the tip of my brush into my water, getting into my light green puddle. I'm going to stipple, touching my brush like polka dots, but back and forth and all around. And I'm going to touch my paint all over this tree. Okay, and now it's going to be wet, And I'm going to grab, so do you see what happened? I touched this one and it immediately pulled the paint over. That's what happens with water, which is why if you want more control, don't let these one touch. But it's okay that it did that. I'm actually going to grab some of it. So I'll clean my brush and dry it. And if I touch right here, I'm going to lift up just a little bit of that. But now I'm going to go into that medium green because that is what I want next. I just wanted it to stay on this on the right side. So now same thing where I'm touching all through here. I'm stippling still. That's how I'm getting it on there. I'm still, it's like polka dotting back and forth and all around. That's my medium color. Let's get into our dark. Okay. And I'm going to do that bottom right corner just a little and under. Now these are like perfect triangles, and I actually like the organic shape that we found here a little better. So I can affect that a little bit by kind of coming this way. But now we're at the point that we're going to give this a dry. So I'm going to quick get out. I have a little heat gun. It looks like this. I'll dry it, and then we're going to come back and do the chunks. All right, here's what it looks like after I've dried it. And if you have a hair dryer at home, you could use that. Otherwise, you really could have started these chunks while it's wet, but if you do that, you just need to know that while it's wet, it's gonna pull. So your brown's gonna come up into the tree, or your green could come into the trunk. So we're wrapping it up basically, but what I wanna show you is now we need to control our water differently. So we're taking just the tip of our brush into our water, and you can grab any brown that you'd like. You see, I'm just grabbing this one, getting a bunch on my brush. I'm still gonna put it on my palette first though, to test it out, make sure I like it, and make sure I can freely move my brush in it. And then from there, we're just, so in tight spaces, you wanna take your brush and tip it more vertically. It's gonna help because it makes the tip smaller. So real gentle, really light on your pressure. We're gonna take this and come down to the line. And it doesn't matter how many brush strokes you do this in, it's no big deal. We'll get both of these done. Okay, so now for fun, I am gonna do this grass. I thought you'd like this part. So I'm cleaning out my brush, and I'm gonna come back to one of the greens that I already have. I'm just picking a pile that's got maybe the most in it. So I'll take this one right here. I'm gonna mix them up a little bit. And I wanna do a line that goes right across this pencil that we did, but I want to kind of lean into the belly of my brush, so it's not really skinny and small, it's kind of wider. So watch this, left to right. Okay, it pulled in the green, or I'm sorry, the brown. I love that. Look, let's get it a little bit more. While it's wet, I could do that, but now I'm going to stop, and I want this line to fade out a little bit more. So I'm going to take my brush and clean it. I'm going to like maybe tap off a little bit of the water so it's still wet though, and I'm going to run the brush touching that bottom edge. I'm going to run it across so that I'm basically putting down water for this paint to flow down into. And then I like to clean my brush and dry it and do this again just to sort of clean up that extra water. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it, but you see how it gave us that really nice soft edge on the bottom. While it's wet, you could add in a little bit more paint, but you have to do it while it's wet, otherwise it's going to leave a hard line, and we want this nice soft line. So you're done. I like to show a variation though, and since we have these like two perfectly I don't know, they're even the same height and everything, trees, right? Now they look like partners. So for fun, you could even add a little heart. Best friends. Okay, so we did it. You're totally finished with this one. If you have feedback for me, I'm new to doing these classes online, so I would love any feedback you have, or if there's anything else you want to see. I probably will end up doing some more fruit, but I'll just be doing small things like this. If you wanted to do a longer one, this one will be recorded soon and will be posted on my website at audreyschatzart.com. I'd love to hear what we should paint next. Thanks, guys. Bye.